Good morning. My name is John Burdick. I'm the Dean of Admissions and Financial Aid at the University of Rochester, and I'm glad to be speaking to you on College Week Live. This is, I think, my third or fourth time having a chance to talk to students, and it's a great way for us to exchange some information. So at any point you have questions, please feed those to me. I'd be happy to respond to those individual questions, and usually the questions are applicable to a lot of the people in the audience. So please throw those up anytime you like. The University of Rochester is a comprehensive doctoral research university in Rochester, New York. We're in the part of New York that's closer to Toronto, Canada than we are to New York City. It's a beautiful Finger Lakes region. The campus enrollment is about 10,500 students. That's about half graduate students and half undergraduates. I'm ready to speak to students who are interested in both undergraduate and graduate programs. With undergraduates, I can pretty much answer anything that you need to ask. If you're a graduate student who's interested in a specific program, you may find that on occasion I want to refer you to the website for that department where the faculty make the choices about which students to enroll and have more information. Rochester is a terrific, wonderful place. It is currently the home to about 2,000 international students, and about 1,700 of those are students from Asia. So it was valuable and important to us to be part of this event, to welcome students from India, from China, from Pakistan, from Bangladesh, from Indonesia, students from Malaysia, Thailand, Hong Kong. We have large numbers of students from almost everywhere in Asia, and in particular a very large number from both India and China. So it would be exciting for us to have a chance to let you know more about the university in any way that you find valuable. We're available by email. If you can, I just had an inquiry just this morning from a young woman from Japan who's been admitted, who's coming to visit on June 12th, 13th, and 14th. So if you have a chance to make a trip, that's obviously the best way to find out all about the university. The three most valuable things that I like students to remember about the University of Rochester and try to make sure they understand is that, number one, it is a research university, sometimes called a Carnegie One level research university, which means that every faculty member here, and by and large every student that comes here, should be thinking about themselves as a research scholar. And the faculty, that means that they're literally earning grants, getting support from both government agencies and from private foundations and companies to conduct meaningful research. And this is, of course, in the sciences, engineering, medicine. I think people know how research works there. It is less common for students to understand how faculty work in research in the social sciences and the humanities, but that is a part of the student here too. If you're a music professor at Rochester, you are involved in up-to-the-minute, up-to-date research in your area. And in fact, we've had some terrific speakers come through recently with our new Institute for Popular Music. So philosophy and history and political science require research to the same degree that the sciences do. They don't tend to get as much financial support from outside because the products of what they're doing may not be as immediately applicable to the commercial marketplace as some science and medicine and engineering innovations, but nonetheless research is a part of every faculty member's life. So when a student comes, they're saying that they want to not only get the education and the training they could get in college in a lot of good places in the United States and elsewhere, but they're saying, and this is pretty unique to United States institutions, or it's more common and bigger at United States institutions, they're saying that I actually want to be part of the research life and environment. So that's one thing to remember. Research is important. Second thing to remember is that Rochester is a residential campus. So most of the students who come here live on campus 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Everything they need to live, to have a place to sleep and eat, and often jobs, all embedded within this large campus and hospital system, and all pretty self-contained. You don't, for us, going back and forth from the hospital or to the laboratory for laser energetics is not so much a matter of going off campus as a matter of walking from one part of campus to another. And students will spend most of their time here, whether it's 2 years as part of a graduate school or 4 years as an undergraduate. You'll literally sort of live your life on this campus. That isn't to say, I mean, there is a city that Rochester is part of. It's a city of about 1 million people, not very large by a lot of Asian standards, but a pretty good sized city with lots to offer, and students do take advantage of the city for internships, for jobs, for activities, for entertainment and recreation. But they do live on campus in that residential feel, and a relatively smaller college field than some big research universities can have is another element that's important to understand about Rochester. And then the third thing is primarily directed at the undergraduate students that might be interested, but it's an important thing to understand because Rochester has made a very distinctive process for students to get educated that no other American university has duplicated. And what's interesting for me about it is that it takes some of the best of what's true about Asian universities, or most of the Asian universities I've known, like the IITs and the IIMs and many, many universities throughout China and Southeast Asia. Rochester invites students to come and study exactly what they want to study and not have to spend a lot of time studying subjects that they don't find interesting and that they didn't plan to study. So that's typical of universities outside the boundaries of the United States. You go to a university to study a specific field that you find interesting and that you want to do more of. So Rochester students do that in very large numbers. They come to pursue a specific discipline. A large number of the students coming from China and India, at least in recent years, have been looking at economics, business, financial economics. All those specializations are strong, and students come to make those studies. Increasingly this year, I've seen more students coming also for the great engineering programs, for some of the science programs, science research, which is another fantastic way to take advantage of Rochester's curriculum. But the other element in Rochester's curriculum that's also important to understand and to take advantage of is we do try to make sure students get the best possible American education at the same time, which means American education has been characterized by the broad liberal arts foundation that gives you a lot of flexibility to study a lot of things well and to understand how a lot of different subjects work. Even as you might be specializing, you actually also get this great exposure to the entire spectrum of learning. And Rochester thinks that's important. Liberal arts education is a really valuable thing to acquire, but we do it differently than almost anybody, any other university you might have heard of. We tell students that they need to acquire a liberal arts education while they're here, and they get to choose how they do it. So instead of assigning students to specific general education courses or foundation courses or a core curriculum, all of which is a pretty common way to do this in the United States. The vast majority of American universities have distribution, core, general education kinds of requirements. We dispensed with all of that years ago at Rochester, so for nearly 20 years now, instead we've been telling students, here's all the classes that are available, here's the ones that would help broaden out your portfolio. There are hundreds of courses that might do that. You choose which ones are going to be broadening. If you want to major in psychology, then maybe you'll find that you're very interested in the structure of the brain and you want to learn a little bit of neuroscience, and so you take your science curriculum, your breadth in the sciences, rather than taking it as a series of introductory science courses, you go in and study specifically about neuroscience as a way to complement what you're studying in psychology. And for a student that would be studying an engineering field, you may find that your branch of engineering has a lot of credible work going on in a country like Germany, and so you decide that it's valuable to study German language, maybe history, literature, learn a little bit about Germany, so you get that opportunity to go work in Germany in your subfield of engineering in which you're specializing and have a much better experience, and you've now been enriched with a strong humanities curriculum even though you're a science engineering major. So that finding the breadth in your own way is the goal of the Rochester education. And of course we provide lots of guidance and advisors to make sure students can do that. We don't just give you the catalog and say go. We give you the catalog and we say go, and I'm right here. Ask me questions about anything you see in the catalog in terms of choosing the courses that you most want to take. And it works very, very well. Rochester students tend to jump into the things that they love with both feet and their eyes open, and they enjoy that a great deal. And at the same time, they get a lot of support for finding the other things that they find interesting and doing more with them. The best way I've found to help students, particularly students from Asia, understand this, because I think it's entirely true and it's entirely appropriate for students coming from India and China, that if you're going to come all that way, you want to get and accomplish something that's going to be valuable to you when you come back home, something that's valuable for your parents who are sacrificing seeing you close by for years at a time, that you're all the way over here and studying, and it's expensive. So what I think of it as is you're getting one major for the world for your parents, one major that demonstrates that you're ready to function in the world and have a great career and earn money and do well. And then one entire major in something interesting that you love that's different, and that's for yourself. So you get a college education that gives you both. It's not just getting the preparation, it's not just playing around for yourself in the ways that you find most interesting. It's that blend of both, and you determine how you're going to accumulate and acquire those ideas over time. Okay, so that's it in a nutshell. Rochester is a research university. It is a residential college campus, and it is a place that students choose and design their own curriculum with help from faculty and senior staff all the way. And the hallmarks of success for a Rochester education is that almost nobody graduates from here without having great jobs and particularly great graduate school options. Our students are very well prepared for advanced education as well as for different kinds of careers. It's an enormously successful placement rate of our students. I know this because a lot of the students borrow some money while they're acquiring their Rochester education, and almost none of them struggle to pay it back. We know that the default rate here is tiny. It's been less than 1% almost all of the years that I've been here. So students are doing well. They're graduating in large numbers. Our largest graduation rate ever is coming with this class next week. 87% is going to be the graduation rate for this current class. That was on top of 97% returning from freshman to sophomore year. So these kinds of data points tell me that we're getting the right students to Rochester for the right reasons, and it's succeeding very well. So I see somebody else has joined us. I just want to mention again that if you've got questions and you'd like to type those into the box, I'll be happy to try and answer them. So I've got a couple, and I'll start now. I know Yunyi is here and has joined the presentation from the beginning, so let me look at Yunyi's question and respond. It says, hi there, thanks for talking here for an early morning. Yeah, it is. It's 5 in the morning here, so I'm having my coffee. As students in British colleges, we don't have GPA measurement. Do you accept British classification of degrees? And for PhD programs, is research experience a must? Thanks. Okay, yes, Rochester has a lot of students from many different kinds of educational systems, including many people pursuing the European degrees and British degrees. There are all kinds of ways that you can establish your credentials for all the programs here. So no worries about that at all. If you are completing a degree program or you're enrolled in a higher education degree program anywhere in the world, we have a way to translate those experiences and those credentials into advanced standing at Rochester. So please don't hesitate. Like I may have mentioned at the beginning, and I'm not sure who all was here, but Rochester has enrolled, well, currently more than 20% of its students are coming from abroad, including more than 20% of our first year freshman class. So Rochester is a very sophisticated place when it comes to working with a large number of international students. And students in British colleges should not feel hesitant at all about coming to Rochester and expecting to have their credentials well understood and evaluated. The other question that Yunya asked was about PhD programs. Is research experience a must? And if you're talking about admission to PhD programs, I would say not a must in the sense that you have to have a specific kind of research degree program, which I know is one of the options in Britain and maybe other places. And you don't have to have necessarily a tremendous record as a research scholar already accumulated before you apply to a PhD program. Strong students who demonstrate through good scores and good grades and good letters of recommendation that they are prepared for the rigors of a PhD program are all candidates who will be taken seriously. That said, the more research you do as an undergraduate, whether you're here or there or at any point in your college career, the more time you invest in genuine research projects. And let me explain in a minute what I mean by research projects, because I think it's an important concept to understand. The more time you spend in it, the more valuable and interesting your applications are likely to be, the more interest the faculty are going to have in potentially bringing you in as a colleague. And when you think about applying to a doctoral program, you're really not so much applying for school like you did when you went to college in the first place. You're applying for a job. You're trying to say, I'm prepared to be a colleague of yours in this field that we both find very interesting. And although I will be in an apprenticeship and I will be studying under you for some period of time, nonetheless, I'm like a job colleague more than I'm like a pure student in that sense. It's a different standard when you go into PhD. About doing research, I think a lot of people who have done a research paper or a research project might confuse that for what I mean when I'm talking about research. Original research typically does not involve or doesn't stop at going out and looking at the books that have already been written and pulling facts from them and assembling those facts into a thesis and a dialogue. That's an important skill as part of research, but genuine research in the way we're talking about involves identifying a problem for which books have not been written, or books were not written with the intent of solving that problem, and pulling information in a whole new way through rigorous testing, laboratory experiments, through surveys of people and data, through close textual analysis of material that wasn't written in the way that you're analyzing it, but that you can use to stretch that out and evaluate a concept or a question from a broader perspective in deep in that literature. So the literature review is a first stage of genuine research where you do understand everything that people already know and have published about that field, but then good research is going beyond that and looking at the next level, not just cobbling together lots of different ideas into a research paper, but testing propositions and questions in ways that allow you to write original information about that field. So good research in college is a really valuable thing to add. Okay, I don't know that the questioner is here, but it's a really good question, and I will answer it for everybody that's here, and Rui and Raul, and you're welcome to ask questions too. I see there are other participants who aren't not clear to me by name, so I can't guess where all of you are from. But Shubham, at 3 o'clock this morning, Eastern time, before I was even here, had thrown out a question that I think is valuable for me to talk about. It says, I belong to a lower middle class family in India, and I hope to study someday in your university. And for those who aren't sure, I'm John Burdick from the University of Rochester. I don't have any funding option available for me. Please let me know if you provide some sort of scholarship. So I've got really good news on that and then cautious news. For graduate students going into PhD programs, almost all of those, with very rare exceptions, are fully funded programs at Rochester. So if you gain admission to a PhD program, you're typically gaining not only admission and access to study here, you're also gaining the funding that you need to support your research and teaching experience and exposure all the way through. So never too many worries about financing for a good, solid PhD candidate. For students going into undergraduate studies, coming from Asia and coming to Rochester as a first-year college student or as a transfer student, there are funding options. They're not as readily guaranteed. It would certainly be the case that most students coming from the United States or from abroad are expected to pay, with help from their parents, a significant share of their college education, and if their parents can afford the entire cost of Rochester, you would normally be expected to pay the entire cost of Rochester per year. But for low-income students that don't have access to other financial options, you can apply for both need-based financial aid and you can compete for merit scholarships. So just the fact that you don't have the funding shouldn't be a reason to stop you from pursuing and possibly finding that you can go to Rochester. It is important to understand that the need-based aid is not guaranteed. We have to evaluate what you and your family need and determine whether there's an opportunity for us to give you financial aid and support that will allow you to attend, but in many cases we find that's true. And then merit scholarships is even more of it's a competitive proposition. If you are one of the very best students enrolling this year from China, from India, from Thailand, from anywhere in Asia, as well as from anywhere from the United States, the best students will get into competition for merit scholarships. By and large, we award those scholarships on the basis of your application for admission. You don't have to complete extra documents to apply and compete for funding. So this year is a pretty good example for the incoming freshmen. We invited 2 students from China and I think 2 or maybe even 3 from India to enter the university with full tuition scholarships, meaning everything educational cost was being paid for by us at the university. That was the most competitive scholarship offer we gave. For many other students from China, from India, from everywhere, they might have received some kind of merit scholarship and possibly some kind of need-based financial aid investment up and down that same scale. So some students are coming with just a little bit of help from the university. Some are coming with no help from the university. There's lots of students who are paying the full price. And then there's a sizable fraction that are, because they're very good, they're getting funding options entirely provided by us at the university. So if you're that good, please apply and then give us a chance to see if that would be a great match for us to give you a scholarship and make it easier to attend here. And then there's a middle group. I talked about the PhDs being fully funded and undergraduate students far less often, but sometimes having access to that funding. The master's degree students, and the master's degree in the United States is that middle degree between a bachelor's degree and a doctorate. And lots of students come here for master's degrees, particularly in the professions, in business, in engineering, in some of the medical and health professions. And when you are coming to the United States for a master's degree, you typically are getting some help, but it's almost never full help. It's hard to get a full tuition scholarship to meet the full cost of a master's degree, partly because getting a master's degree is a very valuable way to step forward in terms of your income potential. And we know that, so we expect you to invest in getting that extra credential. A typical profile for a master's student is that they're a very strong student. They don't want to spend the entire time required for a PhD program. They're not interested in the doctoral kind of work, but they want to spend typically 2 years getting an advanced degree and being a better professional in that respect, in engineering and MBA programs, things like that. So they will typically come with some help from the university. In fact, with engineering programs, it's often as much as 50% of the help is coming from the university. But they're also going to be self-financed to a degree, either money that they or their family come up with on their own, or money that they earn or borrow while they're here at Rochester. So general answer to Shubham's question is yes, there's hope. Even if you are a very low income student, you don't feel like you've got any real source of funding to approach the incredible costs of an American research university, and I understand how much those costs can be discouraging, but you shouldn't stop there and say, well, it costs too much, the price tag is too high, I'm not going to do it. If you have been dedicating yourself to be a very successful student and you do well in your classes and on your exams and you've got great support from your teachers and you're near the top of your class, you should apply to the best American colleges. Maybe if it's a burden to apply because of the cost, then ask them for waiving the application fee. Lots of colleges will do that. But give colleges a chance to say, wow, this is not only somebody that we think can do the work here, we think this is one of the best students we can get from anywhere in the world, and therefore we're ready to provide some extra degree of support. So don't think of scholarships as an automatic, but they're also never something that you should not think you've got a chance to get. Excuse me. Okay, I've got another question, and I'm happy to keep going with questions. Those of you that are on and are watching, again, my name is John Burdick. I'm the Dean of Admissions and Financial Aid here at the University of Rochester, where it is 5:22 in the morning, and I'm excited to be talking to students, I assume, from all over Asia, and I'm glad to have a chance to get your questions. Question from Mustafa is real specific, wants to know if I have a master's in pharmacy program. We have, I'm going to say no, only because the Master in Pharmacy in the United States is not a very common degree program. Most students in the United States these days who are planning to work as pharmacists are earning the PharmD degree, the Doctorate of Pharmacy. Rochester actually doesn't offer the PharmD either. What Rochester does offer in large numbers and abundance is postgraduate fellowships and post-degree internships and activities in pharmacy, pharmacology, pharmacological sciences, but not the PharmD. So if you just want to get a Master in Pharmacy, I'd encourage you to look online and do a broad search for American institutions that might offer that degree. It is less and less common in the United States for colleges to offer the Pharm Masters because a Pharm Masters is typically not enough to get you hired as a licensed pharmacist in the United States in most places. It varies from state to state, so it is something you can seek out, but it's not it's no longer a very common degree, and that's been true for I want to say 20 years, Mustafa. That the standard entry-level degree for most pharmacists in the United States involves the doctoral program. Now, the doctoral program in pharmacy doesn't take as long as a medical doctorate. It it's typically a 3, sometimes even only a 2-year program to get your PharmD if you accelerate. So I would actually encourage you to look into the PharmD as an option rather than stopping at the master's, and then you'll be well prepared for practicing pharmacy in the United States and Canada and Western Europe, as well as having the education you would need to go back to Asia and work in countries there where the master's might be the more typical degree. So I see several people are on. I don't have any more new questions coming my way. Almost everybody that's here was not here at the beginning, so I'll mention again that there are 3 valuable things to understand about Rochester, and then you can click on our site and see a whole lot more. But there are 3 things that are important to me for students to understand if they decide they want to apply to Rochester, and especially if they decide to enroll and want to succeed here. The number 1 thing to understand is that Rochester is a high volume research university. There were $400 million in sponsored research in 2012 and in 2011. That is research crossing the spectrum from the Center for Humanities to lots of research in economics, business, political science, one of the top programs in the world in those fields, in psychology and brain and cognitive sciences, and then into the areas that most people sort of automatically think of when I say the word research, in engineering, in optics, in the basic sciences, in medical sciences and health and public health. This is a whole spectrum of things that Rochester offers in research. And every faculty member that comes here is a research faculty member first and foremost. That is their responsibility when they're hired into the tenured process for faculty at the University of Rochester, whether at the medical center or in the college or at the Eastman School of Music. They are hired with an understanding that they will continue to produce new knowledge in their field that has not yet been published anywhere, that has not appeared on Google, it is not available on Wikipedia, it's not available typically it's not available outside the boundaries of their discipline until they study it, answer some interesting problems with it, and write it. And so the students who come here to study with those faculty should mostly be students who are interested in learning that process of research and contributing that for themselves. And when I say learning the process of research and contributing, most of the students who come here and learn the skills of research and the tools of research from our faculty are not using that to become research faculty themselves. They're using it to apply that research in fields of business, to make money, to start new enterprises. They're applying it to social enterprises and questions. They're applying it to fields across the spectrum. They're applying a set of skills they've learned as research scholars. Second point real quickly is that University of Rochester is a residential college, so when you come here to the city of Rochester, which has about 1 million people, you tend to live right here near campus and make your entire life on this sort of small village campus where there are 10,500 students. And it's completely residential in the sense that almost every student that comes here can live here for the entire duration of their program. And then the third thing to understand, and this is primarily for the undergraduate students, is Rochester is this very special curriculum that, in my mind, blends the best of American higher education, which is this broad liberal arts tradition, which other countries, many countries in Asia, are having universities crop up that have more of this liberal arts focus, but it's the way the United States has been doing things for 150 years. We're good at that. But it also blends that with what I think of as the best of a career and very personal centered education available outside the boundaries of the United States, where you go to a university specifically to study and read for that subject. You're never locked in that way at Rochester, but you do have that opportunity to go and focus in depth on the thing that you care about the most and not be forced to spend your time in a broad liberal arts education. You actually will achieve both breadth and depth at Rochester, but you'll achieve it in your own way and under your own plan rather than a plan that we pre-created for you. There's no general education requirements here. There are no required subjects. There's a generalized requirement that you will pursue something in depth and that you will balance it out with some other things in some different parts of the university, but you will make the choices about what those parts are. Okay, I've got a couple of questions, and I want to keep going on those. Shihara, thank you, asks about our mathematics department, the degrees we offer there. Rochester offers everything in math from the PhD down to several different kinds of bachelor's degrees. There's Bachelor of Arts in Mathematics, Bachelor of Science in Mathematics, a Bachelor of Arts in Mathematics Statistics. There is a program in accountancy, which some math students want to do. There's a program purely in statistics, and there's a certificate program in actuarial science, which has been popular with a lot of our students. So, and then master's degrees and PhD programs in mathematics. And a lot of the math students who start here as undergraduates actually start to acquire some of the graduate course in education before they finish their 4 years. So you can keep going through for a while. In Gaiby, it says, as a college student in business management, should I pass any kind of prerequisite before master's? If you're a college student now studying in business, you would still probably, and if you wanted to enter any kind of business program here at the University of Rochester, you'd want to be prepared to do well on the GMAT, the Graduate Management Assessment Test, and in some cases the GRE if you're looking at a more sort of a science-based master's program, and we have several of those here in finance and disciplines that require a much stronger foundation in mathematics than the traditional MBA or undergraduate business programs offer. So yes, you'd have prerequisites in the sense that at least you'd want to be well prepared in math, and you'd want to pass exams that test both your mathematical acuity and your practical judgment and some other specific skills that are considered good foundations for a graduate program in business. What kind and how many exams should I pass? Okay, I mentioned that. If you're looking at the graduate programs, the GMAT and the GREs are the main tests for business students. For undergraduate students, we have an interesting, I think, a very Rochester kind of policy. Any national exam that you take, and that could be Cambridge A-levels, it could be IGETC, it could be IB, International Baccalaureate, it could be Advanced Placement, which is very common in the United States. It could be subject exams that are national in scope, and the French Baccalaureate and other kinds of exams have that scope. We will accept any of those kinds of tests as a demonstration of how you approach and how you succeed in a testing environment, and that's all we're really looking for. We'll look at your marks in school, the support that comes from your school, but we will also look for this one extra level of proof from some kind of national or international scaled exam. Question about the minimum GPA. There is no real minimum GPA for Rochester. Every student who applies will get a good long look no matter what their GPA might be. We are extremely competitive. At the undergraduate level, we had more than 17,000 applications throughout the system for admission to Rochester, and we were aiming to enroll about 1,350 students. We actually had an over-enrollment, so we'll be a little bit bigger than that. But we're highly selective in admission. So when I say that there is no minimum GPA, I mean that everybody, no matter what their GPA, will get a very serious look. But it's absolutely true that the students who've done better work in their classes all the way along, and the exams and the grades reflect that, are going to have a better chance to be admitted to Rochester. The average GPA for the entering freshman students this year was, well, it's a 3.83 on the 4-point scale. So the best way to think of that is it's 6 excellent or A grades for every 1 B or merely good grade. So the majority of our students are doing very well. A lot of them are doing perfect straight A, highest excellence work all the way across the board. Would it be an advantage for me if I had any kind of essay in relation to my major? No. Actually, at least for graduate study and sometimes for transfer students, it would be valuable that there's some indication in your essay about what you want to study, because you're getting into a fairly specialized area pretty quickly. But for entering first-year undergraduates, which is the population I work with most, I really don't think that your major is likely to be, at least it's not the only thing that would be valuable to talk about. We know when you apply for your major that you've got that interest and that's useful information about you. The essay is really your chance to give us some different information, some more personal insight about the way you approach problems and goals. Frankly, we're trying to get an insight as to how you would function as a member of our college campus community, not just an individual who knows how to study and earn good grades and good test scores, but an individual who will contribute to the other people around them through their curiosity, through their efforts, through their kindness. This matters to us, and that's the kind of stuff that you get a chance to demonstrate in an essay or in an interview. And then the follow-up question there, is there any subject of an essay that's better or more acceptable in this university? For undergraduate students, Rochester is a Common App school. We use the Common application, which I think close to 500 universities and colleges in the United States are using now. So you would want to maybe look at those prompts and find out which one of those stimulates the best thinking for you about what you want to say in your essay. And then we have a couple supplemental essays on a Rochester supplement. Shahara Fernando asks, how are the scholarships? Shahara, I wonder if maybe you're from Philippines. That would be cool. How are the scholarship and financial aid opportunities for international students? I talked about this a little bit, so I apologize if I'm duplicating information for anybody that's been on for a little bit. Rochester expects undergraduate students to pay their full own price, but a lot of entering undergraduate students will get both merit scholarship help and, in some circumstances, need-based financial aid from the university as well. So we don't guarantee aid and support for an admitted student or a student who's evaluated as capable. For international students coming to Rochester, you do, in most cases, have to be ready to demonstrate that you're ready to pay the full price or at least a significant share of it, so we can try to meet you somewhere along the way. So, but every student who applies for admission here has scholarship and financial aid opportunities. And I haven't looked at the numbers this year, but I would guess that even a majority of our international students are getting at least some help. It may not be a lot, but at least some help from the university. So Shahar, I hope that answers your question, and please let me know if you need to know more. Hikmat Garamanov asks about how much the payment besides scholarship for studying master's degree in the fields of economics or marketing. Okay, the typical way we evaluate costs in the United States, and certainly this is the way we do it at Rochester, is there's the tuition. You're paying for your opportunity to go to classes and meet with faculty. All of that's covered in the tuition. There are fees, and some of them are mandatory fees. One fairly big one for students coming from abroad is the United States will not let you come here without participating in the U.S. healthcare system. So there's a health insurance fee that gets incorporated. And then other kinds of fees for various kinds of things. That's not anything like tuition. It's a much smaller fraction of the costs. So you'll see that tuition and fees a lot, and then room and board. So we calculate as part of the expenses for being here the costs of having a place to sleep and stay and put your stuff and study, and then also the costs of eating. For most of our students, a lot of this is eating on campus. It also could include incorporating the expected cost of eating off campus. And then when we're calculating your total expenses, those are the charges that might come from the university. Tuition, fees, room and board is all bills you would get from the university, and this year for undergraduate students, those bills add up to, I think it's $57,000 US for the year. We also estimate some extra costs for your personal expenses, for your travel back and forth, for your books and supplies. These are all variable costs. They're not direct charges from the university, but you should anticipate another maybe about $2,000, maybe a little more, maybe a little less, depending on how careful you are, that you are spending of personal money on your educational process that aren't covered in the direct charges from the university. So the total budget we use this year for international students, this is for undergraduates and also for full-time graduate students in master's programs, that estimated budget for the entire year was $64,645. So that included everything we charge, which is the tuition and fees, including, in this case, a pretty significant fee for health insurance, and then room and board, and then it also included estimates for how much students would need to be prepared to spend to get back and forth, flying back and forth to home, and then buying their books and supplies once they're here. So, Hikmat, I hope that helps answer your question. Shahara has another question. Terrific. Does taking a gap year off after high school affect the final admission decision? Shahar, the way most students do it, and I think this works out great, is they apply for admission while they are still in high school. They gain admission offers, and then they let the school know that they would like to take a gap year. And that works just great, because while you're in school, you have access to your teachers, your counselors, your transcripts, the testing environment. It's all well supported for you to do the application process and do it well. But then once you gain admission to college, most of them are going to be very good about saying it's fine for you to take a year off. For students, and Korean students, we've had this phenomenon. They're taking time off for military service, sometimes more than a year. That's typically well supported by U.S. universities. It's an accepted and understood part of the process that students might take that gap year. So that's no issue at all. You can do it the other way. You can plan to not go to college right after high school. You can plan to take a year off to do something else, to travel, to work, to volunteer, to develop another skill or talent that wasn't available to you in a high school education. That can be fine too. I find that the students that apply after they're out of school often have very interesting stories, and they often make very good students that we know would contribute a lot to our environment. The only thing they're foregoing is that support system that's in place to help guide you in your application process. So for a lot of students, it probably works out just the same either way. They're really good students and they're doing interesting things, so it doesn't matter. But for some students, it might be better to do it the other way around. Plan your gap year, but meanwhile, go ahead and apply and get your admission to college so that you can have that security that you've been admitted to a particular place. Okay, I see that everyone that's here is somebody who's already asked a question, and I hope that I'm giving you answers that are helpful to you and help you make decisions. Okay, if there are not more questions, I am happy to stay on here. It's happy to keep talking. I got up early so that I could do this, but I'm also happy to let you go. So if you're done, if you don't need to know anything more about the University of Rochester, or you're ready to, with the most important questions you had, you could let me know, and I won't be offended by signing out. And if you want to stay on and hear more, I'll just keep saying a little bit more about the University of Rochester and continue to welcome questions if they're coming my way. I think a few of you on now were not with me at the beginning, so again, my name is John Burdick. I'm Dean of Admissions and Financial Aid. I have responsibility for, and Ayush is a new participant. Kumar Ayush, nice to meet you. I'm very interested in helping students coming from so far away that are coming to the United States and would be coming to Rochester. It's a large part of the student body at Rochester. You can maybe see behind me that there's a globe and some artifacts from my travels in Africa. I'm leaving for Kenya again on Friday. And I've been to India many times and China many times, and I'm going back in July and August to China, back to India and Bangladesh and the Middle East in September and October. So it's exciting for me to know that you're there and that you've got interest in the University of Rochester, and really great for me that so many of the students at Rochester did. I'm forgetting the number now, it's 25 or 30% of our student body are students from abroad. So we've got a lot of great American students, but we also have a significant fraction of really good students who come from all over the world to be here. And they are pursuing research, they are studying and earning degrees and training, and they are living on campus. So for us, all of those elements matter. The training and the education you get, we are confident that we're offering a first-rate training and degree program that students can take anywhere in the world very successfully, and they're well prepared. We're confident that this is an extraordinary research environment for students who want to be part of the lives of research faculty. Rochester has had 8 Nobel Prize winners. This has been an incredibly supportive environment for great research. The very first woman president of MIT, which is one of the great research universities in the world, came from Rochester as an undergraduate student. The just departed Secretary of Energy for the United States, Stephen Chu, was a Rochester undergraduate. So we've got strong and deep connections in these fundamental science fields and research, and if anything, an even better, bigger reputation across the world in political science, economics, business at the Simon School of Business, and of course our world famous Eastman School of Music, which is one of the best that there is. Shahara has another question, so I'll make an answer to that. Shahara wants to know, does the university allow students to major in 2 areas at once, and if so, how will that process work? Thank you, Shahara. That's a terrific question. I think you might not have been here when I mentioned that Rochester's curriculum is deliberately open to students making their own path, and one of the things that we make it very easy for students to do is to major in 2 very different subjects. There's no general education, there's no required subjects at all, there's no breadth or core requirements that are specific. So if you come to Rochester with a clear-cut interest in engineering and music, or French literature and biological sciences, or economics and medicine, those kinds of combinations that are pretty hard to do in a lot of places because it just adds up to too many requirements, are very easy to do at Rochester. So the way I think of it is, you got one major that you lock in solid because you think it's got prospects for your income, it's going to be well regarded by the marketplace. That could be something, that sounds lucrative, like business or engineering or medicine, and that's all great. But then you've got one entire major, and you can put just as much or even more energy into that that's just for you, and that could be something wonderful like literature or theater or political science just because you love the rough and tumble of politics, or psychology because you want to understand something in greater depth. Philosophy, these are all things that traditionally don't sound like jobs, but they in fact set you up very well for long-term careers because they give you access to writing skills and analytical skills, and they train you in a very broad way. But you can fully major in that at Rochester even while you're also completing your degree that the world automatically assigns value to, your engineering degree or your very hard technical degree. And so doing both at Rochester is a hallmark of our students. And I often think that a lot of our students are much more likely to be both right and left brained. They're good at two different kinds of things in a big way. So absolutely double majors, but not just double majors. I know a student, he actually works in my outer office several days a week. He's quadruple majoring. He's covering all of the breadth through his different majors. So he's quadruple majoring in math, history, economics, and what is his humanity? English. So he's got the whole spectrum of things. And you can count on one hand the number of people in the United States that graduate with a quadruple major in a given year, but that's actually pretty well supported here at Rochester. Quite a few triple majors every year, and the vast majority of students are at least doing two things well. Maybe not all the way to a full dual degree or double major, although that's common, but certainly two things that they're doing in very great depth. Okay, I see several students have joined since I spoke at the beginning, and we've got we've got about 14 minutes left. So let me mention, for the benefit of the few people who joined us, and I apologize to those that have been here a while and have already heard this. I'm Dean of Admissions and Financial Aid. I'm John Burdick from the University of Rochester. Rochester has three elements as an American university that are important for me to share with you and to have you understand. Number one, it is a Research One university. It's one of the top 100 research universities in the world by any measure, and on some subjects rank anywhere from number 1 to number 20. This is through the National Council of Research Rankings that came out in 2006. We're strong across the board in 60 or 70 different major fundamental disciplines, from medicine all the way across to English literature and theater and the humanities and music. It's a full spectrum, and Rochester is a very important research environment that way. So the students that come here will be part of that research environment as part of your education. You will join in on that process. Number two, we've got a curriculum that is unlike any other in the world. It blends the best of what I think of as coming from abroad and the best American traditions in higher education into one curriculum structure that students own. So every student that walks in here from India or China or Thailand comes in with the same opportunities the American students have to take whatever they want. They design their curriculum from the first day to the last day, and it certainly can include something they came to study in depth. You need that to get your visa, and you need a plan, but it also includes at least as much opportunity, and typically twice as much opportunity beyond your major, to pursue a full second major, a third major, or other things that you find interesting, and to make a plan for what you want to do with that. So that curriculum is an important part of Rochester. 96% of the students that come to Rochester indicate that the curriculum was part of what they chose in deciding to come. And then the third element is this is a diverse residential research community. 25 to 30% of our students overall are international. It's 20% of the incoming freshmen in this class, more than Columbia University in New York, I found out recently. We have a big international population on a relatively small, compact residential campus. So students from all over the world are living together in a campus community that is fertile and interesting and pretty brilliant. So that's the three things about Rochester that matter the most. Okay, a student who's unnamed has said, I'm not sure the IELTS test is available. Rochester does, for non-native speakers of English, Rochester does want to see demonstration of proficiency in English. This is true at all levels in all programs. We do accept all three major tests, at least all three major tests that I'm aware of. We accept the TOEFL, we accept the IELTS exam, and we accept the Pearson's College Test Academic. So whichever one of those tests is the one that you find yourself ready to take to demonstrate your English proficiency is a fine way to demonstrate for us that you're ready to go. I'd also mention, and it's probably important to understand, for a lot of our students coming from abroad, even if their English proficiency isn't yet at the top, they're not fully ready to participate side by side with native English speakers in an academic setting, we do have conditional admission, and we do have programs providing a little more exposure, a little more depth in academic English. It's called the English for Academic Purposes program. We do have a way to get you up to speed after you've arrived just a little bit. So if you take the IELTS or you take the TOEFL or you take the Pearson's College Test Academic and you are unsure if your test score is going to demonstrate that you're ready to be here, don't worry about it too much. That will be a part of what we evaluate, and we will need to be sure that you're ready to go, but you don't have to think that there's a certain threshold score you must get to gain access to Rochester. I will say that the typical profile for students on the TOEFL, the internet-based TOEFL, the typical score for undergraduates that we consider demonstrating ample proficiency is 100 in total and 25 on each of the subsections. We pay particular attention to the speaking and writing subsections on the TOEFL. On the IELTS, the average score coming into Rochester is 7.7, or right around a 7.0 is typically a pretty reasonable demonstration of ability. Below a 7.0, you typically we would think you would need some additional English support after you get here. And pardon me, I can't recall the comparable scores for Pearson College Test Academic that qualifies. But I hope that answers the question about the IELTS test. And then I've got one other student at 4:46 a.m. who said hello. I see that there's many of you on here. Some of you have names and you've been on here with me a long time, and I hope I'm giving you information that's useful to you as in terms of deciding whether or not Rochester is a place you'd like to apply and maybe places like you'd like to go. And then I've got a lot of other students on here that I don't know your names, but I'm glad that you're here. And if you have any questions, please fire them away. We've got 9 minutes left. I've been talking for 51 minutes. I'm sipping my coffee to keep awake because it's only 5:51 a.m. here in Rochester. Let me do one thing, I'm especially glad to do this for the 3 or 4 of you that have been here for a long time, maybe more of you that have been here for a long time. If you have a follow-up question after we get off this morning, I'm going to be gone for a little while. I'll probably be back around 7 a.m. Eastern time, so that's going to be about an hour from now, and can be in chat with you to answer more questions in chat. But also, please feel free to send me an email anytime, and I will direct you to the right person to answer your question, or if I can answer it myself, I'll answer right away. My email address is deanafa, D-E-A-N-A-F-A, A as an apple, F as in Frank, A as an apple, deanafa at Rochester, R-O-C-H-E-S-T-E-R, the name of the school, .edu. So if you type that and send me an email and you have a question after we're done here this morning, or if you don't get a chance to come back into chat at some time with Rochester. And by the way, we're on College Week Live every day, 8:30 to 5 Eastern Time, ready to answer questions. So you can always do regular chat with us when on the regular days that's available. On days when College Week Live is not offering a special program, Rochester is a partner that continues to offer daily College Week Live access. So typically can always jump in and chat with somebody here, a member of my staff, to get questions answered. Got a couple more questions here right now. I am from India and I want to know about Masters in Engineering Management. Great question. Rochester has a spectrum of programs from engineering to business, and in particular a very popular, relatively new, it's about a 5-year-old program in technical entrepreneurship and management, which I think probably the one that you're talking about. That program is a business education designed for people who have a technical background. So it's literally a way for somebody who's got a technical engineering, computer science kind of degree to deliberately develop the skills that would allow them to take that technical knowledge into realms of business, either into working in major corporations, working in international, multinational corporations, or being ready to be an entrepreneur and set up business of your own, taking a new product or a new enterprise or a new idea to market. So technical entrepreneurship and management is a popular program. It has a lot of international students, as do the advanced graduate programs in pure engineering and pure business, the MBA programs or the Master of Science in Finance programs. So I hope that helps answer your question. Admission to that program is competitive. It's actually conducted by our Center for Entrepreneurship. And so you obviously might want to get in contact with them to understand the best things that you need to do to be prepared to compete as a candidate for that master's program. So I think I answered that question. Do you have that course? Yes, we have the It's called TEAM. That's the acronym, TEAM, Technical Entrepreneurship and Management. And here's another question related to the English language exams. Although my IELTS is high enough to apply for graduate, I still feel a little worried about common conversation and daily lectures, so any trips to do before I go abroad. I appreciate the question. I do think it's valuable to immerse yourself as much as you possibly can before you come here or after you come to Rochester in English speaking environments. So you want to cultivate native English speaking friends. I don't think there's a country, certainly not a major city in Asia, that doesn't have lots of English speaking environments, whether through formal instruction or through expat communities and the kinds of places that they hang out. The language of business worldwide includes a lot of English, the language of science and technology. So any place you can put yourself where you get daily exposure to English, and especially exposure to somebody who speaks English as their first and native language, will help you gain your confidence in terms of that conversational element. And that's critical. Success in higher education in the United States is not just acquiring the training and the knowledge and the degrees. It's also certainly about networking and making contacts and building your experience and your exposure to teams of Americans and Europeans and Asians and Africans. We've got people from all over the world, and English is the language that they will have in common when they get here. So the greater your level of comfort in speaking conversational English with all kinds of people, the better off you'll be. And or taking some kind of trip to a more English-speaking environment is great. I know, when you live in Asia, it's maybe simpler for short trips to get into an English-speaking environment like Australia, which is great. That's a fantastic way to improve and hone your skills. I have only 59% in BE CSE. Will that become a problem, sir? Just an important concept about the marks and the grades that you earn. It always has context. So some countries, some schools, some systems, the grades and marks are higher and lower on the scale than they are in other places. In the United States, the typical student coming into Rochester from an American high school has earned mostly A grades. Top, excellent, highest marks, 4.0 on the 4-point scale, A grades most of the way. Some of the best students we have coming from abroad in what I would call more rigorously graded systems, the French baccalaureate comes to mind. Some of the educational environments in China and India are this way too. They grade on a much tougher scale, which I think is probably a good thing. And so we would be looking at your relative achievement within the scale of what's offered at your school, rather than me saying that there's a pure cutoff line and a 59% is not going to be good enough. What I would encourage everybody to evaluate about whether or not you'll be competitive for admission to Rochester is, are you among the most successful students in the environment you're in now? If you're in a college or if you're in a secondary school and you are a topper, that concept in India, or you're one of the best students, then chances are good that you would also be considered a good candidate student for Rochester. If you are somewhere in the middle, a reasonable chance that maybe you're for Rochester, maybe your exam marks demonstrate better than your actual grades, what you're capable of doing. Certainly worthwhile to apply. It's more of a risky thing. You may not be as likely to be admitted as the toppers, but it's worth trying. If you know, and you tend to know this, that you're sort of just getting by, passing your classes, not excelling, there's a lot of people who are doing better than you are, they're more dedicated, they're more successful each time. Yeah, I think your chances of getting into Rochester, if those are your circumstances, are relatively low. We're not going to take as many students who haven't performed well in class and haven't performed on their exams. And I hope that helps answer that question. Helpful, thank you. Glad to hear it. Got 2 more minutes. Tell me the requirements for the Master in Finance course. Nirupama, my email address again is deanafa, D-E-A-N-A-F-A, at rochester.edu if you want to talk about this more. The requirements are similar to what I was just describing. The best students with the best scores are going to have the best chance to gain admission, but there isn't an absolute firm bottom line cutoff for that, either in terms of your GMAT or your GRE scores or your grades in courses. I think it would be important in a Master of Finance candidate to have good math marks and good math demonstrations. That's probably the single fundamental criterion that would apply to everybody in finance. BTech holder from India in electronics and communication, apply for MS in computer science, certainly. You may or may not, with a technical degree, you may or may not have achieved as much math and physics as is commonly true of the entering master students in the US. So look at your background there. The more calculus you've had and the more basic physics preparation, the more likely you would be a successful candidate for an MS in computer science. And then, and I guess these will be my last two questions, very quick. If I get a good GRE score, yes. If your marks are not as high as you think they could have been, but you get a really good GRE score, you are improving your chances for admission. Again, there's no automatic yes, you're in with a GRE score. There's no cutoff line on the low end, but you certainly can help to compensate for less perfect grades by a more perfect score. And then last question, is criminology subject acceptable there? Certainly okay if criminology has been the subject you've studied to apply to other programs coming here. Rochester doesn't teach a criminology or criminal justice professional degree. Lots of degree programs at Rochester would prepare you to do criminal justice or criminal science or criminal analysis well, but it's not a specific criminology or criminal science or degree program at Rochester. That's typically in the United States, that's not a degree program offered at the very best research universities. Okay, I'm going to sign out now. It's 6 o'clock. For those of you that would like to know more about Rochester, we will certainly be back in chat throughout the day. I'll be back myself personally in 1 hour at 7 a.m., I hope, or not too long after that. So please come back if you need more. And thank you very much for all of your really great questions, and we hope to talk again soon.